Welcome back to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany, where we explore cutting-edge methods to enhance our health and well-being. I am your host, Brittany Ford, and I am so thankful that you have tuned in today. This episode is really interesting. We dive into NAD and looking at it from a perspective of how it impacts women and women's health. We talk about hormones, we talk about fertility, menopause, and just these different phases where there's a lot of change that happens in women's lives and how aging and longevity and cellular aging actually impacts those different stages. So on the show, I have Dr. Nicola Conlon joining me, and she is the founder of Cheeto. I love Cheeto. They have an NAD supplement that I take and have always loved and always recommend. This is the only NAD supplement that I really take. So they are my go-to. And Dr. Nicola in general is awesome. Lovely to have another female biohacker on the show. And I'm just excited to always support female companies in this biohacking and longevity space. There's not a lot of female founders out there. So it's important to just give them the time and energy and voice and platform that they deserve. So I think you're going to learn a lot. This is a part 2. We did a episode a few months ago on NAD, and it was like the foundation episode. So we talked a lot about what causes the decline of NAD in the body. How does it relate to aging and longevity? What we can do about it? What lifestyle factors might influence it? And we really looked at the research behind aging with NAD and why there's so much research being poured into it. So go back and listen to that episode if you haven't listened to it. I will link it in the show notes for you because it is a very helpful one. And I know a bunch of you have asked me in my DMs before, like, hey, do you have any episodes on NAD? And that is the one that I always point to now. So go and take a listen to that if you haven't yet. Before we get started, let's do DM of the day. Thank you to everybody who always writes in. I love getting your messages. Even if it takes me a few days to respond, I do respond. And I am here for you. Regardless of what's going on in my life, I'm here to support you and your health. So sometimes I shout them out on the podcast. So this woman wrote in, hey, Brittany, your recent podcast episode on gut health really resonated with me. I've been struggling with digestive issues. My gosh, same. And wonder if you could suggest some practical steps to improve gut health naturally beyond diet changes. Thank you for all you do. I really love your podcast. Thank you so much. I love this. I love the kind words. I love the feedback. It feels really nice. And I just love the positivity. So yeah, practical steps to improve gut health naturally beyond food. Great question. There are a few things that I would recommend that are more on the habit side of things that can actually make a big difference. So a couple of things that come to mind. The first one would be slowing down how fast you are eating. When I was studying nutrition, the recommendation, I think, for food was like every bite of food, you're supposed to chew about 25 to 30 times for every single bite. So every single forkful that you put in your mouth, you chew that 25 to 30 times, which is a lot. So a lot of the time we are eating really fast. We're eating on the go. We're eating at our desks. We're eating, while we're working. We're not necessarily paying attention to how quickly we're eating. So a big thing that can help with your gut health is actually slowing down how fast you're eating. This allows the saliva in your mouth to start to break down the food. And this is actually the first step in the digestive process, happens in the mouth through the saliva, because the saliva has enzymes in it that help break down food. When we're eating fast, we just swallow things whole. We're not like properly chewing. There's no time for those enzymes to kind of break that food down and start that process appropriately, right? So then it's harder on the gut to then break it down, and it can cause, various gut health issues if we are having slower digestion. So start with that. A little trick that I used to recommend to clients with this was, especially if you're eating something with like a knife and fork, take a bite, and between every single bite, put your knife and fork down. What we see a lot of is people taking a bite of food and then they're filling up the next load of food onto that fork, before they are even done what's in their mouth. So I would chew that, put your knife and fork down, chew, and then once you're done, pick up your knife and fork and then, load it again and then do it again. That's a really easy physical way to do it. Sometimes people need that physical visual cue in order to understand that, hey, we need to slow down here. The other thing that comes to mind in terms of practical steps would be to stop drinking any type of liquids while you're eating. This is something that I actually struggle with. I drink so much water and I like so much tea, so many things. And I always love to kind of just rinse my mouth after I eat something. And I don't like the feeling of food on my teeth, I guess. So if we can stop drinking during meals, this allows the food to be better absorbed in our gut. And it's very practical, right? Think about the different food particles in your gut and being able to be absorbed appropriately instead of sloshing around in there with whatever drink you've had while having that food. It allows for better nutrient absorption. It allows for faster digestion, more appropriate, proper digestion. So that can be something that helps as well. Again, what I used to recommend to clients was stop drinking 30 minutes before a meal and wait about 30 minutes until after a meal. And maybe you start with just a big meal, right? So just start with dinner or something like that, maybe lunch, whatever your biggest meal is, and just remove the drink. Don't put any drinks on the table whatsoever. And then see how that feels and see how that impacts your digestion. So those are a couple of tips. I'm not going to get into any more. I will send you more information in our messages so that I can help you out. I just wanted to provide those two for everybody listening so that they have a bit of a cue and a cue. I don't even know what that means. An idea of what they can do in order to optimize their gut health further. And a shout out to Bioptimizers. I love making their mushroom milk. I talk about this a lot. So essentially it's Mushroom Breakthrough is their product. And this is my pick-me-up every single afternoon. So I take 2 scoops of this, I add it to coconut milk, and they have different flavors. So it's chai, chai, caramel, and chocolate. Those are the 3 flavors. And it has a bunch of mushrooms, functional mushrooms in it that really help your brain to work better. So instead of going for coffee and a donut, you would have a glass of this. And let me tell you, it is phenomenal. Okay. It actually is phenomenal. So it helps with brain recall, memory recall, being able to focus, reduces the chance of procrastination, increases productivity, has things in it like cordyceps, reishi mushrooms, a bunch of other functional mushrooms in a lot, quite a substantial amount. So that's what I love to take every afternoon. So check that out. That's Bioptimizers. You can use my discount code biohackingbrittany and you actually get a discount off of all of their products. And a shout out to Glycanage. I think we actually talk about Glycanage in this podcast episode. So Glycanage takes a look at your biological age and they test your biological age through looking at the inflammation in your blood, in your body. Sorry, not your blood, your body. So they take a look at your inflammation and they really assess, okay, based on this, we think that you are this age. And Glycanage and Nuchido, which is Dr. Nicola's company, actually worked together. And what they had, and I think the study is on both of their websites, but basically they were able to lower people's glycanage through her Nuchido supplement. So they lowered biological age through taking something that supported NAD, which is fascinating. So I've had my glycanage done a few times. Both times were higher than my chronological age, which really indicated that there was room for improvement for me. And it was something I'm glad I did because I definitely learned a lot from it. But I really suggest for all the people out there interested in aging and longevity and NAD and optimizing your health. And if you're worried about your inflammation levels, this is really what you want to get tested. Okay. It's pretty interesting. And you get a free consult as well. So you get to meet with someone on their team. They go through your results and basically tell you how to improve them. So use my discount code biohackingbrittany and go through the link in my show notes and on my website and you can save and enjoy this episode on NAD. I think you're going to get a lot out of it and I will catch you soon for another one. Welcome to Biohacking with Brittany. thank you for tuning into today's episode. We are diving into NAD on this episode today, and we are actually going to look at it from more of a standpoint on how it affects women specifically. Now, I did an episode with Dr. Nicola Conlon on this quite a while ago. Go listen to that. It is a great foundation episode that talks all about cellular health, aging, longevity, and how NAD kind of fits into that. And we will get into that again today, but we are going to really try to look at why this impacts women differently, how, and what we can do about it. So Dr. Nicola Conlon is joining me. She is a molecular biologist and founder of Nuchido Laboratories. She focuses on restoring our levels, our NAD levels, to combat this aging process. We're going to look at hormones in women's health, the science behind NAD and its impact on aging, and really, what we can actually do about it. So, Dr. Nicola, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. So briefly, I know we talked about this on the first episode, but for those who don't know you, how did you kind of come to this point of developing Nuchido, and what was your journey like for that?
Yeah, so I'm a scientist and I specialize in cellular aging. So what is it that is actually going on in our cells to drive everything that we experience as part of the aging process on the outside? And prior to starting my company, Nuchido, I actually worked in drug development, basically designing drugs that were to slow our rate of cellular aging. Because what we know is that our age is actually our biggest risk factor for pretty much every major disease that drug companies are trying to treat. So there's this idea that even if we can slow aging just a little bit at the cellular level, can we actually slow onset or our risk of age-related disease? And I ran projects within drug development that were looking for drugs to do this, but became really frustrated because many of the molecules that we saw that were working really well were not drug molecules. They were natural molecules, but basically drug companies weren't interested in them because they couldn't patent them and own them. And commercially, this made sense, but ethically, I was like, hang on, we need to do something with these other molecules. We need to get the science out there to benefit people. So back in 2017, I left the world of drug development and I founded Nuchido Laboratories, where our mission is basically taking all of the cool science in the longevity space and all of the molecules that are not drugs and translating them into products that people can actually benefit from now that actually have good science behind them.
I love that. Yeah. And I love the approach that you take towards this. It's such a root cause approach. And I think it's just so needed in this space. And it's just really exciting to see. And also it's really exciting to see a woman develop a company like this in the longevity space and biohacking space, because it is so male dominant. So, when you and your team first reached out, I was like, oh, we have to work together. You have to come on the podcast, because it's just so nice to have more females in the space, and then also just be able to talk about the science and the connection to women's health specifically.
Yeah, it is a very male dominated space, actually, isn't it? Not only the biohacking space, but definitely the longevity and just science in general, in terms of both, working in it, but then also like when you look at the research, women are excluded. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I get it. I get why women are excluded, right? Like this hormonal change that women are typically on. It's, your hormones are different every day for about 28 days throughout the month, whereas men are kind of on this like 24-hour cycle. But it's still hard, because so many of the recommendations that I see in the space of longevity, of biohacking, so much of the science is only on men. And so then you try to do it for yourself, but you're so biologically, chemically different. And then you're expecting the same results, but it's like, wait a minute, we have to take a different approach here, because we can't just copy and paste and expect the same thing for women.
Yeah, exactly. And scientifically, yeah, it does make sense. But then also there are ways now where we can kind of understand, just doing the experiments with women and understanding how these sorts of things all interplay with our hormones, how we maybe need to tweak things for women because we are biologically very different. And certainly when it comes to longevity, we do seem to age differently to men.
Exactly. So in terms of that, like generally speaking, how have you seen from your research or maybe just being in this space that you're in, like how have you seen it that women do age differently from men, whether physically on the outside or on a cellular health impact?
Well, I think there's two aspects. So one is the lifespan and one is like our health. So in general, across pretty much all species, female seem to live longer and have a longer lifespan than males. But the interesting thing is that actually a health span seems to be shorter. So our health span is the proportion of our lifespan that we actually live in good health. So meaning that we're not suffering from age-related disease or ailments. And a woman's health span actually seems to be shorter than a man's, even though we're living longer. And, that what that means for a woman is that as it currently stands, we are spending a big portion of our lives in poor health. So I think the statistic for a woman, certainly in the UK, is that right now our lifespan is expected to be 83 years, but our health span is only expected to be 64 years. So that's like nearly 20 years of our lives that we are currently living outside our health span, meaning we're suffering from multiple chronic age-related conditions, which for me is just crazy to think that if I don't do anything about it, or that's how I'm expected to live, that is what my future will be. So there's a real need to kind of understand, what is different? Why do we have this? How can we improve our health span? Because at the end of the day, we now have these longer lifespans due to improvements in healthcare, sanitation. But if we're not living them in good health, then, that's really something we need to be aiming to improve.
Wow, that is wild. That's actually the first time I've heard that. What is the predicted health span for men if it's 64 years for women? Like, what is the years for men?
Do you know what? I don't actually know that answer.
Okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't actually know. I didn't look at the men.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, that is so interesting that, I always hear that narrative of like women live longer and like people talk about why do women live longer? And there's all this debate of, is it because women tend to have like more of a community and people to go to? So there's like this mental, emotional, psychological side to it and social side to it, which I do think impacts your health quite a bit. But then it's very interesting to actually say, okay, wait a minute, their health span is actually lower than men. And just, from your, I don't know, maybe from your 2 cents or like hypothesis wise, like, do you have any kind of idea of why that might be? Is it because of how much women tend to take on versus men? I'm just curious what you think might be the reasoning behind that.
It's an interesting one. I think, the lifespans could be the kind of role that women play. Like you say, tend to have more community, more support. Men, tend to have poorer mental health and are doing more physically demanding jobs and, perhaps not living as healthy lifestyles. Certainly, in the sort of, not that long ago, I think things are changing now. But I think that one of the big reasons in terms of health span for women is the impact that menopause and our hormones actually have on our general cellular health. And when it comes to anything to do with aging, we know that despite the fact that we talk about, aging in terms of how we look, our wrinkles or how we feel, things like that, the visual or aspects of aging, actually everything that we experience as the aging process is being driven by what is happening on the cellular level and the health of our cells. And we know that the changes that occur during menopause can massively impact a woman's cellular health.
Wow, that's interesting. So you think it's related to how you go through menopause and what that looks like for you. And I guess, I don't want to say how bad it is, but maybe how bad it is.
Well, I think it's, a lot of women, if you ask them about menopause, some women are fortunate that they sail through it and don't really have many symptoms, but a lot of women will experience some quite major symptoms. And actually a common comment, shall we say, that a lot of women will make about menopause is the fact that they just feel like suddenly they have aged. Like 10 years and like 6 months, have aged really, really quickly. And they can't put a finger on exactly what it is, but they feel like everything has kind of gone downhill. They feel a lot older and it happens very rapidly. And, up until recently, there was no research to prove that this was happening, but there have now been studies done where they've looked at a woman's biological age. So our biological age, unlike our chronological age, which is just the number of years since we've been born, our biological age is the rate at which we are aging on the inside at a cellular level. So it's like the age of our cells inside of us. And what they found is when they measured this biological age in women over a 6-month period where they were transitioning from perimenopause to full menopause, they found that on average, a woman's biological age increased by 9 years in just 6 months. So this shows us that this transition and the change in the hormones is having a huge impact on the cellular rate of aging. So it actually supports now with some data why women feel like, they really aging during this time. And 9 years seems like a lot, but this was the average. So some women, it was up to 20 years, their biological age increased. And that is a massive change at the cellular level.
If there's one mineral you should be worried about not getting enough of, it's magnesium. Magnesium is the body's master mineral. It's powerful and it's involved in over 600 critical reactions, including hormone balance, stress management, sleep quality. Even digestion is influenced by the presence of magnesium. But there are two big problems here. One, magnesium has been largely missing from US soil since the 1950s, which explains why it's estimated that up to 75% of the population may be deficient. And two, most supplements contain only 1 or 2 forms of magnesium, when in reality, your body needs 7. The only magnesium supplement on the market that has the full spectrum of all 7 forms is called Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This is my favorite. I've been taking it for over 2 years. That's why I'm so excited to tell you that I was able to arrange a killer deal for you for this summer. You won't find this deal on Amazon or even on the company's own website. This deal is exclusively for my audience, and it's for a very, very limited time and only while supplies last. So right now you can actually get a bottle of Magnesium Breakthrough for free. Like actually, you get it for free. I'm not kidding. So go now to my website that they made for me, which is magbreakthrough.com/biohackingbrittanyfree, and get your bottle of Magnesium Breakthrough for free today. Again, that's magbreakthrough.com/biohackingbrittanyfree. And you get it for free. So go now. It's linked in my show notes of this episode and it's linked on my website so you can find it really easily, or just DM me and I will send it to you as well. All of us should be on magnesium and this is my absolute favorite one to take. Wow. That is a massive change, especially so quickly. Like within a 6 months of like changing that much is pretty scary. It's just to think about it. And, I've obviously, my mom, I've seen her go through it and other women like that have just been around and I hear about the symptoms, a lot of us hear about the symptoms. And I actually have quite a few women who listen to the show who are in that age category. I think the average age for menopause is about 51 in North America. And so it's like ridiculous to say this, but like I've started thinking about menopause, even though I'm like, 20 years out, because I think about what we can do now or what you can do in your 40s or like during perimenopause that can really help to kind of like make that time easier on yourself and easier on your cells. Have you seen any research that says like, okay, the women who live this type of lifestyle or maybe eat this type of food or do this type of thing have an easier time and there's less of a rapid aging process on their cellular health during menopause?
I think that anything that a woman does to invest in improving her cellular health at any age is only going to be a benefit. And that's because, a lot of people, when they think of menopause, the first thing that comes to mind is fertility. We think of these hormones as just being important for fertility. But what many people don't realize is that our fertility hormones, these sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, they're actually very important for a lot of different cellular functions. So, for example, if you look in our cells and you look at our mitochondria, which are the energy producing power plants in our cells, they literally take the food we eat and convert it into all the energy that our bodies need to survive. These mitochondria are actually covered in receptors for estrogen, and they rely on estrogen for normal function to produce energy. So all of a sudden, when our estrogen is pretty much non-existent anymore, when we've gone from having really high levels to very chronically low levels, mitochondria are like, where is our estrogen supply? Like, where's it gone? Why is this not getting switched on? Why are these pathways not getting activated? And we start to get mitochondrial dysfunction, which means our mitochondria literally do not produce the same amount of energy from or the food, same amount of food that we've always eaten. And this is why you'll hear of many women complain of things like chronic fatigue and tiredness, and not only like the physical fatigue, but also mental fatigue. So brain fog is probably one of the most common symptoms that people have. And this is because our brain requires a lot of energy. Our brain is absolutely full of mitochondria. I think it's, estimated we've got something like 86 billion neurons, and every single neuron has like 2 million mitochondria or something crazy like that, which means there's suddenly a lot of mitochondria that are going, where is my estrogen supply? And it's estimated that our brains as women can lose up to 25% of their function very suddenly when estrogen supply is not there to fuel this energy production that our brains rely on. So, it's the link between our hormones and our cellular health is critical. These things are not just influencing fertility. Inflammation is another big one. We know that estrogen levels influence the activity of our immune system. So obviously, like, we want our immune system to be active when it needs to be, but unfortunately, our immune system become chronically overactive, which means that it never gets turned off properly. And we get this sort of low grade, smoldering chronic inflammation, which is why a lot of women, more than men, suffer from autoimmune conditions. And our hormones, estrogen, can actually help dampen some of this. So suddenly when the estrogen's not there, we start to see real issues. So all of these things are affecting our health at the cellular level, which means that anything that you can be doing to try and mitigate this and improve cellular health is always going to be a benefit.
I love that. I just think it's so important how you laid out those different links. Yeah, the rapid depletion of hormones that happens during menopause is, significant. And like you said, has a role on our cells and how we age. But, when you're describing that, it also actually makes me think of the rapid depletion that women go through during postpartum after birth. And the symptoms are kind of similar. Like, and it's honestly, it's just because I'm in this world right now that I think about this, but women go through like baby brain, right? Like their brains actually shrink after they give birth. And there's like this rapid decline of hormones after birth. And, there's the brain fog and the lack of memory recall. And, obviously there's so much going on. But again, like it's just making that link between, okay, you have this sudden drop off of hormones and your brain actually needs a certain level of hormones to function optimally. And then that impacts your cellular health, which impacts your aging as well. So it's honestly all tied together. It's not just like we can support one pathway without supporting the other pathways. We really need to look at things very holistically when it comes to women's health.
Yeah. And I tell you one thing, maybe don't measure your biological age after you give birth. I mean, you can, it might be an interesting experiment, but I certainly know that in most women, their biological age shoots up after giving birth. It then recovers, but it does shoot up rapidly after giving birth.
Yeah. Do you know what the time frame is of that? Of like, when does it come back to what it was potentially?
I'm not sure. There's a company called GlycanAge. They've done some studies into this. In fact, they were the team behind one of the studies on about the biological age of menopause. I don't know if they've actually done any full research studies on it, but I certainly know that, feedback and things they put in presentations from customers as examples, it does definitely push it up. So yeah, you're probably looking definitely 6-9 months plus. You probably want to be waiting to get an accurate reflection. But yeah, I mean, it would just be, if it was me and I was pregnant again, I'd be like measuring it straight away and like every month just to see what happens, just because I'm a scientist and I'd love to geek out on that sort of stuff. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I love GlycanAge and I've done their test a few different times and I've worked with them and they have, just such an interesting biological age test. It's very humbling when I get my results back because my results are usually not good. And I have to like take a step back and be like, okay, what am I doing in my life that's actually contributing to these aging processes? Sometimes we're just doing too much and we need to actually do less and, do more things that are in the parasympathetic state that reduces stress versus the cold showers and the HIIT workouts and adding all of this onto your plate. At least that's what I've found is I've had to kind of find this like sense of balance in the biohacking world where a lot of the biohackers, the big guys in the space just do so much. And for me, it's like led to burnout and it has backfired to be honest.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing that actually we can now have something that we can reliably measure and track this and be able to understand like what is working for us and what's not and gauge that? Because, I think for a long time, especially in the biohacking space, people are blindly just doing everything we're told to do, but not really understanding, does that really work for us? So the fact we can now do things like measure biological age and it does change with lifestyle and the things that you're doing, you can see it having an effect, is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed it a lot actually when I first started intermittent fasting. I was fasting like every day. I was doing the 16-8, and this was probably like 5 years ago or so. And it started impacting my sleep. And then it started impacting my menstrual cycle because it was too much, too often. I wasn't eating. I just don't think I was eating enough. And yeah, it backfired. And even though I was like, oh, I want these cellular benefits, like, intermittent fasting has been proven to help with these hallmarks of aging. It was like, no, like this is not worth it because this is obviously impacting my hormones, which it honestly probably made me age faster. I'm guessing if it was like impacting my menstrual cycle at that level.
Yeah. And this is another, the fasting is a key example of an area where all the studies have really been done on men. And a key example of how it may not be the same for women.
Yeah, exactly. I do know like if I was postmenopausal, I definitely would do intermittent fasting probably all the time because again, like you're no longer in your fertile years. Like you don't have to worry about this like very delicate balance of hormones. So I think you can get all of these cellular benefits without necessarily like the negative outcomes that you might have.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of women's health and kind of men's health, I know you touched upon like health span versus lifespan, but I was telling you before we hopped on the recording, like when I look at my husband and I, we are aging differently. Like, so my skin, I feel like I have thinner skin. I feel like my skin is aging faster than his. And he has like a receding hairline and he has gray hair. And like, I don't really care. Like it is what it is, but I don't have any of that. And it's just so interesting to watch both of us like age. Like, is there anything we can ever like even do about how aging shows up physically and aesthetically? Or is it just like how it's kind of expressed with our DNA and genetics and like what we're prone to?
Ooh, so I think we know in terms of aging in men and women, the risk of, the onset of age-related disease and things like that's definitely different. In terms of the more physical aspects. I think, in women generally, skin aging shows up differently. And again, it goes back to the hormones. We know that the hormones have a major influence on our skin. We know in terms of our collagen production and things like that. I also have this theory. I mean, I know you said you feel like your skin was worsening, but obviously when it comes to skin aging, a huge driver of skin aging is UV exposure and photo aging, especially in facial aging. And, for many, many years now, a lot of women will be using makeup and putting SPF makeup on and things like that, whereas men really don't. So I always have this theory that, we're going to hit a point where all women look way younger than the men, because we've actually been proactively trying to prevent some of this damage, whether we realized it or not. But yeah, that's just a theory that I have. But I think it's, again, most of, both in men or women, a lot of people blame their genes and they say, oh, it's my genetics. Now, for some things, it absolutely is your genetics. So for men and, hair loss, a lot of that is genetic. Absolutely nothing you can do about it. Male pattern baldness. Some things like with hair graying early, that can be genetic as well. But actually, the vast majority of aging is not genetic. It is your lifestyle. And depending on the studies that you look at, it's either between 70 to 90% of the way that you will age is dependent on lifestyle, not genetics. And actually for your genetics, it seems to only really kick in after age 70. That's when genes become important to how well you're aging.
If you're feeling out of sync with your hormones or struggling with fertility, I totally get it. I've been there and it can be so frustrating. But I found a delicious way to support your reproductive health. I have developed hormone balancing, fertility boosting chocolate. This isn't just any type of chocolate. It's packed with adaptogens like maca root and antioxidants from cacao and pomegranate. These ingredients can help regulate your hormones and support your preconception health and fertility. You need to download this recipe ASAP, okay? Because it's more than just a treat. It's a powerful way to nourish your body from the inside out. Imagine indulging in a rich, delicious chocolate that not only satisfies your sweet tooth, but also boosts your wellness. Whether you're trying to conceive, balance your hormones, or just crave a healthy indulgence that you get to make from home, where you get to control all of the ingredients and also optimize your health, this recipe is perfect for you. Don't miss out on this tasty, fertility enhancing, optimizing health solution. You can go to biohackingbrittany.com/pages/fertility-chocolate and download the recipe for free right now. Go for it. It's just right there waiting for you. It's linked in my show notes. It's linked on my website. You're going to find it super, super easy. So treat yourself to better health, one delicious bite at a time. That's really interesting. That's like a long time from now.
Yeah. So we've got no excuse, basically.
Yeah, we have no excuse. That's really, really interesting. So when you say lifestyle, and you might not know the answer to this, but like, can you unpack that a bit more? Like, what do you think in the lifestyle bracket, like in that bucket, like what is it that really can accelerate aging more than other things? Like if we look at lifestyle, is it our sleep? Is it stress management? Is it exercise? Like, what do you think are maybe the one or two things that you're like, oh, this is like probably the biggest area where we should be focusing on?
Well, I think there's sort of two parts to it. I think one part is focusing on the things we shouldn't be doing, which are things that, probably everyone's sick of hearing about because we've all heard it before. But, our diet, eating a beige diet that's pro-inflammatory is incredibly damaging to our health. It's highly inflammatory, and, not eating enough of the right fruits, vegetables, plant materials that have, really beneficial molecules, phytochemicals, things like that in it. It is, again, something that is not good. It's not good for our gut microbiome, anything like that. Other damaging things, excessive alcohol, smoking, sunburn, all of these things are very damaging to our bodies and damaging to our cells. So I think a big part of it is restricting, obviously, the stuff that is not good for us. But actually, I think the other major part when it comes to lifestyle is this idea that I always say to people, Like everything that we need to be young and healthy is already inside of our bodies. It is inside of our cells. It just gets turned down as we get older. So if you think about a child, you think about you when you were a child, you had the same genetics, you had the same genes, it was the same you, but your body could heal itself. It could repair itself. It could be way more resilient. You would fall over, scratch yourself, cut yourself. It would be healed. You would bounce back really easily and have loads of energy. That has not disappeared. But what we find is that a lot of those pathways that promote all of that energy, resilience, repair, healing simply get turned down as we get older because these pathways are not getting activated. And they're not getting activated because we live a very comfortable life where most of us who are, middle-aged are going to work, sitting all day. We're getting up in the morning. We are having a comfortable life where we have our breakfast, we have a snack, we have our lunch. We mustn't go over a couple of hours without eating because we won't be able to concentrate. We're made to have this comfortable life. And unfortunately, a lot of those good repair processes in our cells are only ever activated when we are, using a lot of energy or we are putting our bodies under a little bit of stress, whether that's by doing exercise, it's fasting, it's, the cold shower, the sauna, basically putting our bodies under that little bit of stress, because these pathways that are within us and have the ability to heal us, they actually use a lot of energy by the body. So the body's like, why would I bother switching them on and keeping them switched on if I don't need to keep them on because I'm comfortable? So I think some of it is about actually, to a certain extent, doing some of these little things that put a little bit of stress on the body to kickstart these pathways that are already deep within our bodies.
Yeah, I think that's so wise. Like it's just such good advice. And it's kind of annoying to hear because you're telling people like, get off the couch, stop eating junk food, stop drinking alcohol, like, do the hard thing. And a lot of people don't
and I think a reason a lot of people don't do it is they don't actually understand. They're just told, oh, it's good for you, but they don't really understand why it's good for you. But then, like, when you think about it, something like, fasting, when everyone's like, oh, I'm not going to fast, like, why would that help me? A lot of people automatically think, oh, fasting's is to do with losing weight or like dieting or something like that. But when you explain to people, no, fasting is basically, putting your cells in a state where the cell is like, oh my goodness, we don't have any energy coming in. So we have to stop being wasteful. And instead we need to repair what we've got and use all the resources we've got to make sure we survive this period of stress. So your body literally starts fixing itself rather than being wasteful, which when it's getting fed every 2 hours, it is very wasteful. And then people understand it and they're like, okay, actually, maybe I might try this because now in my head, it makes a bit more sense. So yeah, I think it's about education.
Oh, I definitely think it's about education and making the science understandable for the average person. And then also making it applicable to that person, right? So like we're talking about women's health. It's like, okay, how does this impact women? Like how does lifestyle specifically impact women and the choices that they make with their aging, and how do they increase their health span so that they can be as healthy as, their partners or whoever they're around into their 70s and beyond. I think, motivation is a really, it's such a big topic and so many people are focused on it and teach about it and talk about it. But from what I've seen and what I've seen for myself and like people I've worked with is like the more personal the motivation, like the deeper it is, the bigger your why, the more successful you are and the better you are at sticking to fasting or whatever the healthy habit might be. And I have found that very much in my own life. And like speaking of aging and menopause and that type of thing, like I've seen both of my parents age very differently, men versus women, like my dad versus my mom. Both have had like health issues, very different health issues. And my mom has had a lot of hormonal issues. And it's actually such a driving factor for me now to make these healthy decisions. It's like, I don't want that for my future. So what can I do right now, 20 years prior to that, or 30 years prior to that? Like, what can I do right now so that I don't end up like that? And it's this very deep personal motivation that I have. And so that's kind of like what I recommend to people when we're trying to like inspire this healthy change that you're talking about is like, okay, like let's figure out what your why is and how is it personal and applicable to you specifically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think, people have to be driven because when you're doing things like this, it's often not going to be like an instant noticeable benefit. It's like you're investing in your future self.
Exactly. Exactly. Is that what you find personally for you as somebody who works in the health space? You probably are motivated all the time because you see all of the research that says, hey, like this is what's happening on a cellular level for your aging. This is what you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, I am so motivated simply because I have seen the experiments, I've seen the data, I've seen the results. So for me, I am like, wow, this is going to change the way we age. Aging is never going to be the same again. And for me, it's about educating and teaching as many people as possible about this because, we are, as a society, have been kind of trained to just think that aging is this inevitable process. And, once it's started, there's nothing you can do and it's all downhill, but it absolutely isn't. And I think that's important, the message to show people that this is not a one-way street. And actually your age and your biological age is actually reversible and it's proven.
Yeah, which is just so fascinating that you can even do that. Like that's so wild. So how does NAD kind of tie into all of this, like with this idea of, lifestyle impacting aging and then the idea of actually being able to reverse your biological age?
So NAD, I mean, first of all, it's something that's just incredibly beneficial in our whole body. It's found in every single cell. It's involved in hundreds of reactions, but I guess the two things it's most famous for are our energy production in our mitochondria, but also for driving a lot of our cellular repair processes in our body. So making sure these repair processes that are keeping us young and healthy are switched on. And it's known to be linked to the longevity and aging space because unfortunately our NAD declines like many things with age. So as NAD goes down, it means that our repair's getting turned down, our energy production's getting turned down, and it's actually driving a lot of the cellular causes of aging or what we know as the hallmarks of aging. So these key things that are happening in our cells to drive the entire aging process. Now, I think what's really interesting in women is, yes, we know that NAD declines in men and women. But actually in women, right at a time when our NAD is really dropping and actually significantly impacting our cellular health in terms of, our energy production, our repair, our resilience, things like that, all of a sudden we're hitting, average 51 for full menopause, and also our hormones are massively plummeting. And as we've just spoke about to great length, our hormones actually impact cellular health. So whilst men will feel the negative consequences of low NAD, women also have like a double whammy where they've also got the hormones plummeting as well, which basically causes the perfect storm for real cellular dysfunction. And I think this is in part the reason, why we see this massive increase in biological age, because not only are the cells struggling due to depleted NAD, but then the hormones drop and that just sort of finishes them off. So there's a lot of interest now in what are the strategies can we do to actually improve cellular health alongside menopause with things like NAD to kind of counteract half of the issue there.
Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And for men, like, is there any somewhat similar correlation? Like, because men's testosterone like decreases as they age. So is there not something similar that happens with them? Or is it because women go through this like kind of 1 year, 2 year period of perimenopause and menopause that we see more of a distinction?
Yeah, so the hormone decline in men is just way, way more gradual. And the big issue with women is, yes, so NAD decline is exponential in both. So it's estimated that it halves every 20 years. And this is from birth. So like by the time you're 20, it's halved. By the time you're 40, it's halved again. And so that's happening in men and women. But in women, you're going from like 100 to 0 in terms of the hormone levels in a very short space of time. And, when you think about the symptoms of menopause, they're actually very similar to the symptoms of aging. So, if you think of a reduction in energy, brain fog, increased inflammation, lack of sleep, things like that, these are all very similar to just sort of general age related issues. And again, when you think about it at the cellular level, this is because our estrogen and our other hormones are actually controlling many crucial aspects of cellular function. So, for example, think of our mitochondria. I mentioned earlier how estrogen is so important for mitochondrial function. And when estrogen's not there in our brains, brain power can decrease by 25% for this reason. So if you then put the fact that our NAD has also halved by this age, well, more than halved, way more than halved actually, and that is also impacting the function of our mitochondria in a very different way, that's like these two things coming together that are completely making each other worse. So if you can even increase NAD, and even if you don't do hormone replacement or anything like that, you're kind of fixing half the issue. So you can have a big benefit on some of the symptoms of menopause. And to be quite honest, one of the reasons why I got so interested in this space was because customers that were using our product to boost their NAD levels, women were just emailing us and messaging us going, oh my goodness, I cannot tell you the difference this has made to my menopause symptoms. I cannot explain how much this has helped my brain fog. And to begin with, it was a bit like, well, wow, okay, this was a bit unexpected that we'd get such significant results in this group of people. But then when you look in the science of it, it actually makes complete sense of why it would benefit this group of people in particular.
Introducing GlycanAge, the ultimate biological age test that helps you discover, measure, and optimize your health. With GlycanAge, understanding your body has never been simpler or more scientific. GlycanAge is more than just a number. It's a comprehensive analysis of your biological age determined by measuring chronic inflammation in your system, a direct result of your lifestyle choices. The test, which is backed by over 30 years of scientific research and validated by over 200,000 tests, gives you insights published in world-renowned medical journals. Getting started is super easy. The at-home test includes everything you need. Simply collect your sample and send it right back. And in just 3 weeks, the lab will analyze your sample and generate a detailed report on your biological age. They don't just stop there, though. Each GlycanAge test includes a free consultation with one of their experts. They'll help you understand your results and suggest lifestyle changes to enhance your health and longevity. GlycanAge is unique. It responds to lifestyle interventions, unlike other aging clocks. Whether it's through caloric restriction or weight loss or any other healthy habit you might bring in, there are studies that show that these beneficial health changes really can make a difference in your glycan aging. Are you ready to take control of your health? You can use my code biohackingbrittany at checkout for a 15% off discount on your GlycanAge test. Discover your true biological age with GlycanAge and start optimizing your life today. I love that. And I love that, like, there's just so much like positive response like that from women, because I think women need a lot of support during that time in many different ways, but it's really cool to see support come from a root cause cellular health approach rather than maybe just more of like a Band-Aid approach, which can often happen, especially in the supplement world. Take this one thing and it'll get rid of this one symptom. But it's like, no, why don't we actually just look at what is causing that symptom in the first place and go as upstream as we can and then work there. And then so it filters down and then you don't get that symptom at all, or it's reduced, or it's easier to manage. I just love that approach. And it's really cool to see that happen. But yeah, the hormonal depletion is very interesting. And I also just, as you're talking about this, like when I was creating my fertility preconception course, I did a lot of research on men's health, and there's a whole men's component to it. And I looked at testosterone in men, And it is decreasing worldwide. Like like men do not have as much testosterone today as they did, 30 years ago, however many years ago. And I wonder if there is some sort of correlation to cellular health there. I'm sure there is. And I didn't dig that further, like that much into it. But when you're talking about like this slow decline of it, but now we're seeing it's more rapid and like men are producing less testosterone now. And then I think like, okay, like why is that happening? But it's probably what, like we're talking about, of like, it's a reflection of our lifestyle. It's a reflection of, not doing these things to actually stretch and push ourselves. And then it, cascading into hormones. Cause like you said, the cellular health and hormones are just so so interconnected that we really need to be looking at both.
Yeah. And when you mentioned fertility there as well, so not only is NAD implicated in cellular health and menopause symptoms, but it's also now directly implicated in actual fertility. So there have been several studies done now that shows that basically as NAD declines in the ovaries, it actually reduces the quality of the oocytes, so the pre-follicle eggs that are there maturing in our ovaries. So it's been demonstrated, not yet in humans, but in mice, that actually if you can boost levels of NAD in the ovaries, it actually improves egg quality and actually restores fertility that had been otherwise lost. So again, this is like a massive area of research. This is, something that can actually be boosted with a supplement that is being proven to restore fertility, which I think in this day and age where a lot of women are choosing to have their families later, is so important, and a lot more people undergoing things like IVF. So that's a really exciting space. And again, looking at the root cause of NAD decline, we know that one of the reasons why NAD seems to decline more rapidly in some people's ovaries is due to chronic inflammation, which if chronic inflammation actually degrades a lot of NAD by overexpression of an enzyme called CD38. And again, it's important to understand the things that are causing the NAD degradation in the first place, because if you want to restore NAD, then really you should be targeting those things.
Wow. Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, I find the egg quality, the egg count, the egg quality, measuring AMH, I find that all very interesting. The typical narrative around it is like, you're born with all your eggs and you can't make any more. And, there's a certain number that mature every month. And then the body picks one, and it's not necessarily the healthiest one or the strongest one, but one is chosen for mechanisms we don't even fully understand. And that becomes our period or becomes a baby, blah, blah, blah. And I just think it's so interesting that that's our common narrative. And I've spoken to a few people on my podcast who've said that actually might not be the case. We actually might be able to improve egg quality and actually improve the amount of eggs and AMH levels. So, and I just wonder with things like NAD impacting cells like that, I wonder if that's kind of the missing piece that we have of, okay, you can actually increase the amount of eggs that you have left. You could actually increase their quality so that if you choose to start a family later on in life in your 40s or whatever it might be, you actually can be successful. It's a really exciting area. And I can't wait to see more research and more publications and people talk about it, because I don't think we know everything in that space yet, even close.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think it's just really, it's opening up this huge potential door, because again, it's something that we can reverse. Increasing NAD is something that we know we can do, and it's pretty simple. It's not a drug. It's not, any sort of crazy procedure. So if it really is having this impact, then this, it will make a huge difference. And again, probably not surprising, because just by the physiological role of NAD, we know how important it is for general health of cells. And, at the end of the day, the eggs are cells effectively, and they need DNA repair. They need all of the different mechanisms, many of which NAD is powering. And, and another thing about the gametes, so the egg and sperm cells, is like other cells, they don't age as much as in normal cells. So physiologically, they're really unique anyway. So it's a super interesting area of research.
It is really interesting. And I can't wait to see what more comes out about it. Yeah, I'm just super curious. So for all of the women listening and even the men listening who are like, okay, I want to improve my NAD levels and I want to, try your Nutrido Time Plus supplement, how can they do that and where can they go, and any other recommendations you might have for them?
Yeah, so I'd say, when it comes to NAD supplements, not all of them are created equally. There's a lot of stuff out there in the market, people promoting all sorts of things to increase NAD. It's important when you are increasing your NAD to address the root cause of the decline. And that's exactly what we've done with our supplement. Our supplement actually addresses the fact that our NAD producing enzyme that we have in our cells declines with age. And this is what's causing the depletion. That is the root cause. It actually switches back on this enzyme and has been proven in a clinical trial. And this is a published clinical trial. So, if anyone wants to actually read the results and see that, they can find it. And if they want to find out more information about the product, they can go to our website, which is www.nuchido.com, spelled NUCHIDO, or follow me or my company on Instagram, at Dr. Nicola Conlon or at Nuchido.
Amazing. I will put all of that in the show notes and on the website so everyone can find you easily. And they can use my discount code biohackingbrittany, which will get you 10% off. And I highly recommend you get on this train because I love taking it and recommend it to everybody. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was great. It's just so awesome to connect with another female in the biohacking and longevity space. And I just love what you're doing. So thank you.
Likewise, Brittany. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Biohacking with Brittany. If you're interested in finding the show notes or the sponsors for this episode, you can do so on my website, which is biohackingbrittany.com. Remember to follow me on Instagram where I'm most active. My handle is @biohackingbrittany. And if you're interested in working together and you want to email me directly, you can do that. My email is info@biohackingbrittany.com. And I look forward to hearing from you and having you tune in next week.